doesn't matter whether the category exists now, because tomorrow you could have made it.
Yes.
It's not just, I'm going to go from 50 to 100 to 150. Talk about our rate of sale is high in these stores, maybe because we're a premium product and these are affluent stores, or maybe we're an on the go and it's transient. So what's the next rollout in stores that are similar and will react in the same way?
Your phrase is data plus stories with the magic. That's it for me.
I really subscribe to that very cliche of data tells, but stories sell. And it's that bit of the stories. You show me all the data in the world, but I want to feel the goosebumps. I want to connect.
Cool, let's jump in. So yeah, Rom, Kieran, thank you so much for doing this. Super excited. I think it's a conversation I've always wanted to bring you guys together. I think one of the things, Rom, when we first spoke many moons ago, we talked a lot about storytelling and how sort of small brands, or I should say small brands, 0 to £1 million brands can use data, a little bit of data plus storytelling to kind of get their foot in with the CoOp. I think my learnings with the podcast has now developed massively, sort of spoken to bigger brands. I think one of my learnings now is that it's not just stories that unlock listings, it's stories plus data unlock listings. And I really want to sort of use that as a kind of a thread through today. Kieran, obviously, what you're doing with North Star, mate, I'm so happy we're sort of partners. I think what the data side is fascinating. When you add those two things together, you can really grow. So thank you. What I'd love to kind of jump in with is kind of what we were talking about before we hit record is who grows categories? Do brands grow categories or do you have to sort of enter a big category and then because you get a little smidge of that, you make a shitload of money when you exit, right? So I interviewed David Milner, who's doing Cross the Molica, he did Tyrrell's, he did, what's the other one? Lily's. And he was like, I'll only work on something if the category is massive. Because I know I will be the premium niche in that. And when we exit, I'll get him a little smidge of that. All good. Conversely, interviewed Citizens of Soil the other day. You know, the really like sort of bougie olive oil brand, like amazing. Their whole thing was challenger brands create categories. So if you look at Oatly, look at Lucky Saint, they create the category from scratch. So Rom, I'd love to sort of get your perspective on where does the retailer, or what's the retailer's role in creating the category and working with the brands? Like, what's your specific perspective? And then we can sort of bounce this around all over the place.
I think two things create categories.
Right.
That is credibility and authenticity. So that isn't licensed to a big brand or a retailer or a small brand or a challenger brand. I think it's about the DNA of these people who are cutting through. I think the line between brands and retailer brand, own brand, has never been more blurred. And I think particularly with some of the economic challenges, we see more people moving into retailer brands. Mm-hmm. But again, they have to be credible. People have to trust them. And there will always be brands that dominate, particularly when it comes to newness. I think brands create categories where there are stories that need to be told. So where it might be education, where it might be something very new, where it might be something very innovative that maybe we need to bring consumers and shoppers on a journey for how I consume it or why I would consume it. I think that's where brands of any size have a real strength. Mm-hmm. The example you used there, though, is quite interesting because in that example, whether you're going after the premium niche, mm-hmm. still creating something in that space, or whether you're challenging in at a mass market level, I think it is, again, about that DNA of challenging and doing something different. And data is really important in that space because often you have to convince a buyer before you get it on a shelf. But I really subscribe to that very cliche of data tells, but stories sell. Mm. And it's that bit of the stories. You show me all the data in the world, but I want to feel the goosebumps. Mm. I want to connect, and that's why that authenticity and credibility anchors back in.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a guy on called Will Storr who literally he's wrote a book called The Science of Storytelling, and he basically says human beings we're the homo nagan species. It's getting very off piece from category data here, but it's basically like we are storytelling beings. Like the whole campfire, we think in stories. We think of the story of ourselves. Like everything is a story, and I feel like some of the things with challenger brands, they think they kind of sometimes necessarily forget that. And it's like, oh, we've got to do all the data. It's like, you still need the story, but then when you can layer it, and I always say like, the data is what speaks the buyer's language. It's like almost, trying to speak, if you're trying to tell a story in French to someone, I'll speak English. But suddenly the data is the translator, that it makes sense. And
I think the data is the comfort point.
Yes.
So actually, I think buyers still, as human beings, connect through stories. It's in our DNA, to your point. It's what we've done since the beginning of time. It's what kept us safe. Those stories around the campfire way, way back is what told us not to go out and run across the plains. It's why the very first stories were artwork on a cave wall.
Yeah.
It is part, ultimately, of how we connect. And I think sometimes challenger brands can hear a lot of feedback and hear a lot of show me the data, show me that it works, and almost silence their stories, because in that moment, somebody isn't going to just don't tell me anything else. They're saying, give me the comfort. Where's the data points? And often it's where this will work for me, for this retailer. What is it that's unique about your product, which means it will work in this retailer with this customer base? But connect them first and foremost through the stories. People buy people and people buy stories.
Okay, now let's go on to like the different, like May, you can jump in with any like kind of stuff that you've learned with all the different brands you've worked with. But I think I'd love to go to that sort of, let's say for the sake of today's conversation, we've got the 0 to £1 million brands, 1 to 5, and then sort of 5 to 10 to 20. There's probably 3 different stages. Everyone listening to this is at some point on that scale. When you're 0 to 1 million, what specific data things, 1 to 3 things, are you looking for in a deck, Rom, that would separate? If the person will put that in their deck or brought that up in that presentation, they would go to the top of the pile essentially.
I think the first bit is back to creating categories, and it's not necessarily about creating categories. It's about identifying the space within the category and creating the product that fills it. So what is it about your product that is different, that isn't a replica of whatever is on the market? You've got to have a point of difference. Shelves are not stretchy rubber things. If you want to be on that shelf, something else has to come off. So give me through data the most confidence that your product will do something differently and sell. Secondly, linked to that, you might want to cover your ears slightly, because if you think about that small business, that 0 to $500,000 to $1 million, that startup phase, if you're a D2C model, you probably have enough data within your business before you need to go and start investing in other business. You might want to invest in somebody that can help you turn it into that story. But again, I think there's become this narrative in our industry of you have to invest in all this data to almost get the listing. And I think that's why what you're doing in this space is really great. It's about accessibility and education, telling that story. And my final bit would be, you have to believe and you have to have the passion. And most founders do, but you have to have the confidence to keep that belief and that passion. Again, linked to what's different, why your product, why your flavor, why now has got to come through. And look, most founders have founded something because they truly believe, and it's fulfilled a need for them. Help get that onto a slide deck, into a conversation, use some of the data, but again, work with people like you to help bring that to life.
I think what you've detailed there is brilliant about, how are you different? What data backs that up? Where is the space, the gap in the category? I think, Kieran, mate, I know we were talking earlier about, I think we can use the brands Y Food and Fuel. And like that new category, the RTD. So I think Brian, the sales director from there, is he's a good mate of mine. He was saying that before, to begin with, they had like 2 little, I think I saw, I don't know who the guy is on LinkedIn, but he put up the thing and it was like a picture, and it was like 4 years ago, it was two facings, and now you go in there and it's just like, what the fuck, it's huge. But with that growing a category and linking this, how do brands create categories? Like, what's been your experience? Maybe we can use Y Food and Huel as an example of that.
Yeah, I think.
You guys come a bit closer as well, mate.
Yeah, so I think before answering that, I think Ron and I often agree on this. The storytelling, I agree. I think the piece is just be able to evidence, is that your view, or are there multiple people who share that view? And that's the piece. And it doesn't have to be knowing what data to use just to support your thinking, and then having confidence in what you think and being able to articulate that's the gap. I think, Dan, your phrase is data plus stories, where the magic. That's it for me. the questions we hear all the time coming back from retailers, really, which I think is a really good way of just pressure testing brands' thinking to have confidence in, are they really clear what they're trying to get done, which is, I think, really helpful, is what need are you fulfilling against? So some is what you described there.
So that's the first question.
First question, are you really clear?
Is there an example of that?
Well, the need for protein is just so broad. That's not what's meant. So it's just trying to get really clear. What is it you think your reason for being is what's the need that's seen you do packing whatever to set up a business or to join a challenger brand and help them get up and running? The next thing is, who has that need? So being really clear on that target market. And again, it might be you'll just come in with a Me Too that's slightly cheaper or with higher margins. So that's fine as well.
What would be an example of that? Would that be?
What is a good example for that?
I think that's more to the premium example you used earlier, where, you know, a little bit of, so what could go either way. So it could be that you want to be in the space where you put the margin back. But for me, where people of premium, where a category exists, confectionery is a brilliant example. Confectionery has existed, not quite as long as communication and storytelling, but sometimes feels like it. Yet it grows in certain spaces again and again, and a lot of that can be value growth from either people who've come in like Tony's Chocolonely and shone a light on, actually, there's a premiumization here because we're doing the right thing through the supply base. Or just into, why are you eating chocolates? Because it's indulgent, it makes you feel good. And we've mainstreamed confectionery, so it's then created the headspace of, okay, how do you make that a really indulgent occasion? And the lipstick effect, how do you pay a little bit more because you're treating yourself?
What's the lipstick effect again? I think we mentioned this last time.
So the lipstick, if I really need to get some new ideas.
No, it's still, I've heard it from somewhere, but yeah.
So it's doing the rounds again at the minute. It is the, and it is proven statistically that when there are economic challenges, actually, we may pull back on some of our big ticket spending, but we might look for little ways to. So a tub of ice cream on the sofa. It can do wonders for you feeling like you're having an indulgent moment. And so actually we sometimes see smaller ticket, more premium items. It was termed the lipstick effect because in the 2008 economic challenges, sales of lipstick allegedly went up. I'm not too sure that's statistically correct.
Yeah, so it's sacking off Ibiza or eating more Ben and Jerry's.
Yeah, if you to rebrand it, it's exactly that. We should.
Okay, so that's super interesting. So first question is what is the need? Second question is
who's it for? Who's the target audience?
Right, and so that's basically who's buying the Tonys, who's buying the
if you think you've got a new idea, who's that new idea for? And then the third thing is, well, what are they doing at the minute? So
this is what the
shop is about. The person that you believe has a need that hasn't been fulfilled. What are they doing now? So are you going to switch them from buying one ice cream to another ice cream? Or are there people that aren't buying the category at all that might start buying the category?
Yeah.
Confectionery is an interesting one, or sweets, where it was always flavour and taste was probably the drivers. And then more recently, in the last few years, it's been around going into the ingredients and almost shining a light on there and saying, does everyone realise that some of the ingredients in some of these products are these? And probably you sort of start to challenge the mindset that you have, which is, well, I had no idea that the ingredients being used in some of the products. And they're more appealing. There's more premiumisation coming as well, where people are prepared to pay a bit more, not just for taste, but just for maybe slightly more expensive ingredients. So there's lots of different reasons for that. And I think the bits helping brands is clarify their own thinking. But there's also, why did I start this business? What's behind it? So many of the brands that are in the space, you're talking the first million now, the founders often aren't now from FMCG. So I think one of the biggest things that's changed, probably since lockdown really, is there are some super smart people coming into the industry that didn't work in the industry before. There's sort of two parts to that. One is that a lot of the preconceptions around which categories can I innovate in, which brands maybe do I therefore take on, some of the established brands, people are coming in and just without not knowing any of that, spotting needs that perhaps were just missed previously.
What do you mean by that?
So what would be an example? The confection one is probably a good one in there, but even if you...
Drinks is a good example.
Yeah.
So huge soft drink category.
Yes.
Lots of the big brands that you could all roll off your tongue that you all know, and you could cover up the label and you'd still know what it is. Great branding.
Yeah.
Well timed. But there has been this expansion into drinks of people wanting more from their hydration. And to your point, people haven't necessarily been in the industry, so maybe don't know some of the challenges. Just coming and going, actually, we believe that drinks should be better for you. So gut health, fiber, kombucha, all of that has created this space for the likes of hip hop. If you look abroad at America and see what the Ollipops have done, and Poppy of the world have done, you can now see that. We've got XOXO, we've got Living Soda. So you can see that space where these small challenger brands have come through, identified it, and been able to move with pace. Yet, to your point, some of them will still sit in a meeting and go, you're using a lot of acronyms. And I think that's something as retailers we need to be really aware of.
What are some of the acronyms that brands, again, I'm going to ask some 3-year-old questions now, because I think it's important too. Like, what are some of the acronyms they should know? Like, what is the sort of some of the big ones? Because you can get so lost in I call it semantic sludge, where you're just like saying all these things that you get so bogged down in it. But like, okay, in terms of like what they actually need to know, and we'll go again, that's that 0 to 1 million stage. Is it like you need to know what incrementality is? You need to know what are some of the things they actually need to know?
I think you need to know that you've got a safe space to ask. If you're literally not $500,000 to $1 million, somebody's throwing I'm sharing this because somebody who is a co-founder of a business used that in a podcast with me in terms of an example of I didn't know what incrementality meant. Now she was vulnerable enough to ask. And I think actually that then creates a really good culture for your business of, well, if the founder can ask what this means, then actually maybe we all can. There will be buyers sitting in meetings going, I'm not too sure exactly how we calculate X, Y, or Z. So I think where you are on your journey with Pride, I would say let's not give them you need to know what RSV stands for. Actually, you need to be able to say, I've got a great product. It's going to sell loads, sales. It's going to talk to a different type of customer. I do encourage people to understand, to your point, who is their customer.
How do you detail that? And maybe we can both jump in on this, because it's like, I think that is, if we really dig into this, like the story bit, the passion, the kind of the communication of saying, I don't know this, and those are really important things. But understanding how we speak to this specific shop or why the shop is different, like how do you actually do that in layman's terms?
There's all sorts of ways of doing that. So I think historically you'd have to spend a lot of money and you'd have to be working in the industry a long time to know who to go to and where to start to find those things out. Or you try to shortcut it by ask maybe an eco chamber or 20 people that you knew, and you were getting really strong points of view from people who looked and sounded like you. If you then looked on the shelves, the brands weren't representative of the UK population, and as we're changing within it, since the rise of technology and things like that, you can find out, you could, within 48 hours, we could help a brand find out who 1,000 people who they believe will be their target audience, what do they really think? Mm-hmm. And you have a chance to then find out and ask your target audience. And the benefit of doing that is, even if you're D2C, and one of the benefits of D2C and brands who've built that is you're forced to go in there and really understand your business on a day-by-day basis, who's the shopping and all some of the KPIs, I guess, that the businesses you do well use to grow their D2C businesses. But in a retailer, it's slightly different because you have an opportunity, the CoOp gives you an opportunity to be in the neighbourhood across the whole country, and there are different people shopping and the needs are different as well. So you've got to go and understand who shops where, what some of the needs, I guess is jargon slightly, but what is it people are doing when they're in those stores, and how do you match your brand? Does your brand match and offer a solution to those people? Mm-hmm. But you can guess, you can spend a huge amount of money, or in the middle now is an opportunity to go out there and just evidence it. So not get lost in data and disappear and lose all the passion and the storytelling, but I think it's taking what you believe to be true and then just going out there and trying it. From my side, maybe slightly biased, but if you put everything on the line to build this business, or you've joined a challenger brand, you're all in on that. And I think there's still an opportunity for brands to guess a little bit less, and make better, quicker decisions. So keep money tight, keep moving at pace, but you can just find out the answer to some of these questions. I think the brands that are doing that are the ones that are starting to speed up, build their confidence, build their understanding of, you don't have to win everywhere, but how do I make the right decisions? And then by the time the meeting with the retailers come along, you feel confident, you feel you've understood, you kind of know. It's like an exam. We talk about it a bit, that it's like an exam. You could try and revise everything for that exam. Probably might say I should have revised something for the exams, but or if you've got an idea what's likely to come up in that exam, you just feel more comfortable if you focus on those areas. So why guess? Why go for
what would be those things to you? What would be those? And again, all of this is context.
Yeah.
Right, but like, what would be some of those things you would be showing?
I think it probably comes back to the areas without repeating that we've talked about. Again, you haven't got to appeal. You asked me a question a while ago that I've not answered around like building a brand new category, but I think it's trying to understand where your lane is. Are you the same as something that already exists? Because from a retailer point of view, they're trying to balance, I should answer on behalf, but you're trying to balance doing the right thing for the shopper with managing a P&L for a business. And you've got to try and find the sweet spot between those. So from a branded point of view, you just need to have a point of view, I guess, on if you fast forward and you want your brand available on retail shelves or .com for an audience, you put yourself in the shoes of the person that you're talking to and just play that through for them. So are you coming up with something different? If so, why and for who? Or are you offering them the same solution they've already got catered for? If you've got a great idea, but it's only a great idea for a few hundred people, it's not a bad idea, but it perhaps doesn't warrant being in 1,000 CoOp stores. If you believe, I think one of the things that's changed maybe in the last 5 years as people have come is that the information is so readily available, people are much clearer about what they need. So you think of the growth of supplements, women's health, areas like that just haven't been well catered for previously. So now the opportunity to almost understand, I was reading this morning where you can take a blood sample within a month, you know exactly what's good for you, what's bad for you, what to take more of, what to take less of. Is it the Yucca app as well? It just helps you understand.
Personalisation is becoming
personalisation, and that increased knowledge means that one size fits all is no longer what we're looking for, but you can't have 1,000 different products on the same shelf. So trying to understand the role you play, who you play that for, where those shoppers shop, where they don't shop, the more you can understand that, I think the better you can build your business, but the better quality conversation you can have when you're in the room with retailers.
From then, just to play from your perspective, Ron, what would you how would you add to that? Or
so I think the other lens that I would add on is, where does it help a buyer or a retailer? So ultimately, everybody wants to do the same thing. We all want to put great products on shelves that sell a lot to the right people and make people able to see themselves on the shelves and interact with products. But if I think about where brands do it well and where there's stretch for brands that aren't doing it well, I think everything you've said is valid. The other bit that I would add on is, how can you show that is going to help what a retailer is trying to do? And to your point around data being available, there is so much information around what retailers are standing for at the moment. So again, we talk a lot through the apiary, which is CoOp's incubator and accelerator scheme, around who do you want your brand to work with? What can your brand do? If you've got something around sustainability, who are the retailers where actually that would probably talk to not only the retailer and the buyers, but also their shoppers, because they have big drives on sustainability. I think if you can understand how your brand can hook into a retailer's overall vision, that's really powerful, because then you help the buyer see their role in laddering up to that. I also think whilst we're talking about incubator schemes and accelerator schemes, they exist to help these sort of brands you're talking about. Now, an incubator is what we're talking about now. I would argue that sort of 0.5 to 1 million. And certainly on CoOp, we don't say you have to be retail ready. We are more than happy to work with people to help get them retail ready. You have to be able to be sold in a legally compliant way on our shelves. But to your point, we're seeing more people come into the space never before that don't have an FMCG background, but actually have a brilliant entrepreneurial spirit and might just need a bit of help. And the apiary is about working with purpose-led underrepresented founders. So we do believe in actually how do we share and upskill. Accelerators are kind of the level 2, £1 million plus. How do we help you get bigger, get slicker, get more efficient? And to your point earlier, if you can grow that size of the pie, then these are the brands that should be having a part of it.
So let's get into that then. So that next stage up, and again, the numbers are a sliding scale, whether it's 0 to 1, 1 to 5, but it is everyone that I've spoken to is about 5 million brands can get stuck. And it's kind of like you get into that first bit of distribution. And then I think, as we've said before, mate, it goes from a game of attack to a game of defense, whereby you're just like, it's all about sort of making sure you're on shelf, making sure you're not losing sales, get that going, and then you sort of get the rate of sale, like sort of a burning furnace, a rate of sale, and then you can increase distribution again. In those meetings, and that may not be a new meeting, that may be you sitting with a senior account manager, probably not the founder, so this is probably moving from story to data.
Yep.
How do they approach those conversations? Because it's a different kind of game when you get to that size. And again, I've never really asked that, so whoever wants to kind of jump in on that.
I think the conversations we have with the brands there, the conversation moves from distribution and getting listed anywhere to almost thinking about, so getting on the shelf.
Yep.
To rate of sale, and how do I go from the shelf into baskets, into homes, and bought again the second time, and then the third time, and the fourth time. So the mindset changes slightly around how do I use my time, money, budget, capability of the team to do those things. At that size, you're still not listed everywhere, so you still are trying to make wins and take over the world and build the brand, but you're trying to play those two things, which is probably like attack and defense as you're describing it. Yeah. You then get pulled quite thin. So the skills of the hunter and the farmer are slightly different. Being able to, if someone's taken a buyer's taken a punt on you and has gone in on your brand's behalf within the retailer and represented your brand and put themselves out there and got you listed, then you need to do a good job for them as well as for you in there and show that worked well. So understanding the levers, how the retailer works, what opportunities are there to appear in more baskets of more of your target audience is where that starts to move. But you can see brands getting pulled been pulled there or stretched there, I guess, on numbers of people, capability, time, teams, processes, structures. Think of a listing. The bit I'd never really appreciated pre-North Star, I guess, was a listing in the CoOp in 1,500 stores requires potentially cash flow that you haven't got, capex that you might need, a change of supplier distribution agreements that you haven't got. So you've got in there and you've pitched and you've put everything on the line. You think you've come out there and done an amazing job. The bit I hadn't appreciated was a 50 store win versus a 1,500 store win. The emotional stress that puts through a brand who's at that stage and what that means behind the scenes is just unbelievable. So you've got all of that going on, as well as the win that comes, the LinkedIn picture and the win outside the retailer, which is we've just achieved that.
And also
it's like a Russian roulette game really that goes on.
The founder of Innocent was saying to me that there's when you get into way more stores, you have this like hollow rate of sale forecast basically, where you think, right, we'll take, say, those 200 stores, we'll extrapolate that out, maybe drop it down a little bit with the 1,200 stores. And so then you raise money for that, you get cash for that, and then suddenly you don't hit that level, and it's a complete cataclysmic nightmare.
This feels like a brilliant time for me to do my distribution.
Yeah, because I'd love to ask, that was my next question, Rom, is like, from your perspective, when a brand comes in asking to go from 200 stores, so say 500, 600, 700, from a buyer's perspective, what are you looking at? What do you need to see to be like, right, absolutely, we're going for it? Yeah,
so I'm probably going to talk a little bit about stuff that I talked about last time, but I think the distribution conversation bit probably had the most interaction with it. Because as you know, still all these years later, I do believe that distribution can be a vanity metric, because we have created this environment within the challenger brand space where there are some really big brands that have really high distribution. And so therefore, a key success factor for challenger brands is get me a 99% distribution. Well, those big brands that have that distribution, even they went on a journey originally. And I do think it is worth, it's not to shrink a mindset. It's not to say you're not really ambitious. But it's to put that realistic pragmatism in. So I still see people coming in and going, it's a great idea and it's going to talk to these, got a brilliant sell, and let's go in 2,000 stores next week. To your point, the stress that can put into a business anyway of achieving a 2,000 store from nothing is huge, which is why we do look at the distribution rates when we look at things like whether it is somebody coming in on the apiary or just a small challenger brand coming into a category. It's always easier to build the rate of sale out, build layer upon layer, and have really positive conversations with your buyer around, actually, our rate of sale is doing really, really good. We're above category average.
Yeah.
What if we built out by another 50, 100 stores? What if we then built out rather than we're in 200 stores and we're smashing it, so let's go to 2,000? Then you're back into defense. Because I can guarantee you will sell more from the right stores than you will from a huge number of stores. And if your proposition's good and it's going to go mainstream, just wait and let it build and build. Because to answer the question of what the buyer's looking for, they're looking for rate of sale that is above category average. You're outselling the category, that you're in a top, lots of people talk about top quarter, top percentile, but broadly, are you selling more than the rest of the category?
That's units, or is that, say if you're a premium product, is it units?
There will always be a balance of units because you have to shift. Obviously, value rate of sale would be more beneficial from a premium product because you're going to be a higher rate of sale. But again, the metric that a lot of retailers will look at will also be what is it doing to cash going through the tills of a retailer. So something to be mindful of as well. I do think that we have to get away from all-store distribution being the success factor because it's going to cost more for a business and you're going to have more conversations that are difficult with the buyer than the engaging ones of let's go again. And if you and your buyer have that very open conversation at the beginning of, okay, what does success look like?
Yeah.
How do we drive that rate of sale? Okay, when we're there, what do we look at? And I think you mentioned it earlier. Lots of retailers segment their stores into different types of shoppers that are shopping there. Certainly at CoOp, we have one of the best ways to segment our stores. So it's not just, I'm going to go from 50 to 100 to 150. Talk about our rate of sale is high in these stores, maybe because we're a premium product and these are affluent stores, or maybe we're an on the go and it's transient. So what's the next rollout in stores that are similar and will react in the same way? That's how you protect that rate of sale.
I think those are the kind of questions that the brands operating at the size you're describing will get a huge amount of value from. Trying to understand if this is the shopper we're aiming for, which are the stores that we should be in, how many of those stores are there, and how should we be having that conversation? So it's not necessarily numbers. The segmenting that you're describing is almost geared up to help that exact thing. So that's the kind of conversation you want to try and have, so you know how far along that scale are you, and the job really is about understanding the quartiles of rate of sale and the focus. How do I just get myself from the shelf into more baskets, into more homes, and repeat? That's the skill. And being almost obsessive over that focus, I think, is the one. Do a great job on that, and then the distribution follows it.
Okay.
But it might not be in one retailer. That's then when you've done a great job, and the story to go to another retailer to describe the job you've done based on a target, knowing that those shoppers may also shop elsewhere based on geographics or whatever it might be. That's the way to build the business up.
If you're a challenger brand that's absolutely killing it in D2C, but you're struggling to crack retail, then you've got to listen to this. Maybe you've got an Ocado listing, maybe you've got a Whole Foods listing, maybe you're absolutely killing it in Selfridges, maybe you're absolutely killing it in your farm shop and your indies. But my friends, making the leap, crossing El Chasm, crossing El Rubicon to grocery retail is not easy. It's the Champions League of FMCG. It's super hard. It means playing at a higher level, and that's where so many amazing brands sadly stumble. Look, retailers want stories backed by data, not dreams and a pretty pitch deck. And let's be real, supermarkets are not just going to magically make a space for you and your little brand. They need data. Something's got to go for you to get in, for you to get on shelf.
And that is why I've got to tell you about North Star. They are the team that's helping purpose-led FMCG brands go from gut instinct dreams to unstoppable pitch decks that actually unlock retailers. North Star are not like another data company that force feed you data like foie gras, that act like a NASA space mission. It's super simple to use. Their team are amazing and they actually get the challenger mindset. North Star are your shortcut to smarter decisions, stronger pitches, and investor confidence, all built specifically for challenger brands like yours. You don't need a massive sales team, you need North Star. Link in the show notes. Click that link and you'll be able to book a free demo with North Star. Highly recommend that, and thank me later.
I think there's tons to pull out of that. I think one thing I do want to understand is, totally get like too much distribution is a vanity metric, but I say at some point brands do, I always talk about sort of the early adopters to mass market, that kind of curve like that. At some point they do want to go on that journey, and your sort of messaging has to change from that sort of first 1,000 true fans, which is probably when you want to be in that small, super premium distribution for if you're a premium niche brand. But at some point you have to go like these brands on the room and go on that journey.
That's not distribution for me, though.
Yes, I was going to say, yeah. So what would you say this is?
I would talk about penetration.
Right.
So I would talk about
just define that for listeners.
So I would talk about the fact that penetration is how many people in the UK population are buying into your product.
Sure.
Now, that is a statistic that you can get through data providers that are available. But again, you will have an understanding of how many people are interacting with your product. The reason why penetration is really good to talk to retailers about is because there is often in a lot of product, even in some of the big ones, still headroom for growth.
Right.
Because what every retailer is looking for is, if I put that on my shelf, is it going to work? Is it going to sell? But then is there opportunity for it to grow and grow? Is it going to continue to earn its space? Is it going to pay the rent if this was an apartment block or a house, for example?
Yes.
So if you can go and say, look, we're in this distribution, great, you've had a conversation about distribution, but we're really early on. So if I think about some of my previous experiences, when I was at Beautiful, and we all know that they've recently exited very successfully, we talked a lot about the headroom for growth, the penetration growth, because that was how you go from that niche buy-in to becoming more mainstream and then becoming mainstream again. And that's when your portfolio expansion NPD can be, all right, well, we've talked to these shoppers, but now we recognise that actually parents want their kids to be healthy, so we can look at kids, or protein, so we can look at a protein signal. That penetration.
So what's the difference between penetration growth and distribution growth? So that means you don't need more stores to do that? In
the example that you gave earlier,
yeah,
you talked about going into other retailers. So actually we've got shoppers shopping in retailer A over here where you can buy a product. Retailer B hasn't listed it. Retailer B lists it. These shoppers might change. So they might shop in retailer A this week and retailer B next week. So you're not getting necessarily any more sales. You're moving the sales around. Likewise, if you're in 100 stores in retailer A and you move into 150, I might have come to this store and I'm going to walk a bit further or drive a bit further to a different store. Penetration growth is you are talking to people that currently aren't buying into your brand. And if you can convert them, and similar to the distribution where we said, look, your rate of sale will be here, and as you build out in distribution, your rate of sale is probably going to slow as you become less relevant from that segmentation. From a penetration point of view, if you've got a product that somebody's buying on a weekly basis and they're really locked in and really loyal, that core group of those people at the beginning of that penetration journey, they're always going to buy every week. If you've then got the next level out of penetration, they might buy fortnightly. The next level out might buy monthly. The next level out might buy once every 4 weeks. But they're all different purchasing opportunities. That is, back to the point earlier, that's incremental growth. That's what
those are different shoppers at each, because the way you detailed it like that, those are different shoppers. Okay, because I think I interviewed Mark Palmer, who was the marketing director at Green and Blacks. And I think we've been having a conversation, I think, over drinks, mate, about like how brands need to be, and it links to what you're saying, Ron, but that sort of circular thing. How do you change your messaging as you get bigger, and how do you speak to some of those shoppers on the periphery who are actually different without losing your fucking soul as a brand? And I think what Green and Blacks did so well is they'd I think they sponsored, to begin with, they did like a blackout thing in London where they sponsored, I think it was either Valentine's Day or something like that, looked like really kind of slick and plush. But then about 4, 5, 6 years when they wanted that outer rim, or that penetration like mentality, I think they ended up sponsoring like, it was like, I think maybe one of the like Car Fest or something like that. So it was much older demographic, but still premium. And that's how they sort of did it. But I think I'd love to understand how when you know more about how your shop is changing, how that affects or changes your marketing decisions. 'Cause I think that's a real art if we go on that journey from here to here.
Yeah. I think it's one of the things that the big brands and the brand leaders have done brilliantly over time is they've understood things like penetration, exactly that. They've then understood the penetration of their brand within the category. They've then got a really good understanding of who the people are. So there are 28.8 million households in the UK. The question is how many of those buy into the category, and then how many of those buy into your brand. That gives you an idea. Then it becomes about this is about people. So who are those people? And again, it will be a mix, but who are our core target audience that we should be talking to? Mm-hmm. Historically, it was only affordable for the big brands to understand that. It's changed now. It's affordable for everybody, I think. For one less trade show, you can understand everything about your business. I've never started a food and drink brand. I know how hard it is because you see it every day. There's 20 emails a day with silver bullets that we can solve every problem you've ever, and it's so hard to know where to start. It's the same. Every day you think someone could help you take the next. It's so difficult, but the bit I can see and the bit having worked for the big brand that I can see now is understanding who your audience is, and then trying to really understand what are they like, where do they shop, what do they read, what do they listen to. The more you can understand, the better you can build your brand, because you can follow where they are, not just in distribution, but you can talk to them. The packaging then makes sense based on the audience that you're talking to. The example of where to advertise, what to promote, who to sponsor, all of those things, it influences now. It's all built on as good of understanding as possible of who your brand is. If you're guessing that as you go through that sort of first million into that next section, again, it's not all about data, but are your stories resonating with the audience that you want to resonate them with? That's almost now. But as you want to then build out the year after and the year after that, I think your point, Ron, is exactly right. Is it more people that you're... So say somebody late 40s, early 50s here now. Am I I've stretched slightly. Is it more of, am I the target audience, and therefore how many of me are there? And you just need to keep going until you've got more people that fit my demographic buying into the brand. Is that the plan? Yeah. Or is the opportunity to broaden out? And if you want to broaden out, then the messaging needs to evolve and change. Not to alienate me, but to appeal to more people. Is that how you're going to grow your brand?
Yeah, it's also the way what you're saying now. I also think like the data actually does inform the story as well at some point, because the more clarity you've got on who you're trying to speak to, everything kind of is downstream from the consumer.
I think that's how it sort of plays, because again, you've got a tight marketing. The budget is so big, and you can't. But the more you can understand, not guess, to complement, again, you haven't got to spend huge amounts of money, but just being able to understand those things helps you spend better, make better decisions, and probably move a bit faster. Or make mistakes, but you perhaps might make slightly less. So thinking about the business that way and building it out that way, I think, is the brands that we're seeing at the minute killing it. I've kind of understood that, and the D2C world and the retail version of that, and just starting to use that to build, really honing their messaging. Amelia Bobbin is rightly held up at the moment as being one of the best, but she's just got the branding incredibly well, but also has found the right language and empowered.
And was that
So Amelia Bobbin, but not just Amelia, the team understand the audience and just speak to them in such a way that really helps to resonate. And I think that's starting just to build it out. There's lots of brands doing it really well, but the power of understanding that, I think, is really important for the brands of the size.
And then, Ron, when it gets to brands much bigger, like how does that, so not much bigger, but like sort of 10 to 15 to 20 million, how does is it the same sort of, you're still looking at data the same way, or how does it get different? Or is it just, because I don't know, it feels like it's kind of a different,
I always say, like, when you're small, like a baby brand, then you're like
Yeah.
a toddler, then a teenager, and then it's like uni, and it feels like that.
Yeah, you have to grow up a bit.
Grow up a bit, yeah. So what does grow up a bit mean like? to you?
I'm not too sure grow up a bit is always linked back to the size of the brand, because sometimes the size of the category can impact it. So if I think about somebody like Dash Water, I think they're doing a really good job of growing up. They would still see themselves probably maybe phase 2 to phase 3, but the numbers we're talking about, might not. So I think you have to look at it in the realm of how long you've been in existence, what you stand for, how easily you can communicate it. So for everybody who's sitting there going, well, I'm a small brand, there are people like Dash, and I'm sure Jack wouldn't mind me saying, who would still put themselves in that challenger brand space. Amelia from
That's another example. So their whole thing was the wonky veg,
Yeah.
which was on the tube, and the aubergine that looked like something else, which they've got them in hot water with TFL. Great marketing. That's super niche, but that wonky veg probably doesn't mean everything to those outer rims. So they've changed it to finally a drink to feel good about, going after Diet Coke.
And the category has changed. So they've changed with
How's
the
it
category.
changed?
So one of the questions that I think a brand growing up should be able to answer is, what matters most? What are the motivators? So when we're talking about this penetration growth, what mattered most when they
retailer for
started
them.
for who they're talking to? So when Dash Water, and I'm absolutely going to paraphrase their brand story, and I'm really sorry, Jack and Alex, but when they first started, to your point, it was about how do we take this wonky fruit, how do we reduce food waste, how do we do something good for the planet and deliver really great tasting drinks? At a time where we still had a soft drinks market that was very much around the soft drink brands that we all know, and we all make choices around whether they're healthy or not, and water was doing its thing. But water has grown in consumption, people have become more aware of healthy hydration, and suddenly there's more demands from the next level out of, I might not be somebody who's buying into it solely because it's addressing food waste. Now I'm the next level out, and I maybe add it to my repertoire. So I'm not necessarily drinking it every day, but I might choose it with a meal deal a couple of times a week. The communication's slightly different, and that's what they've done. And I think health, if I think about a lot of brands that play in that health space, that's probably the journey. When you're talking to the core of your penetration, your really loyal customer that you're going to talk to first and foremost, if you're a health brand, you're probably talking about, what is it about this product that is going to change my life? And therefore, I'm going to get a habitual purchaser. I'm going to purchase this every day because it's changing something. But all of these brands, again, Biotiful, Kefir was about gut health. And then the next level out, there was a slight nuance of this can just help your gut feel better. And then there was another layer out of it's just part of how you...
That question of what matters most is beautiful, because it's like because I think the other thing with brands, there's so many good things you can do. It's like, which one do you put forward first?
And don't do everything.
And don't do everything. So Bativo is a brand I'm like obsessed with.
Me too.
Imma's been on, like, and so Sam, but their whole thing is, what's most important to us is we're alcohol free.
Yeah.
Like, really and truly. And then also they've got on that probably outer rim of penetration. It's actually, because it's like, what's it called, like botanicals, and like there's not apple cider vinegar, is actually really healthy for you.
Yeah.
They don't lead with that. That's on the sort of periphery. So that's really interesting. So what matters most to you? What other questions as we go on this journey to become a household brand should they be able to answer or think about?
So to have the most breadth, you have to think about how often is your product going to be taken out of the fridge, out of the cupboard, how often is it being, how many usage occasions? So I talked about repertoire earlier. How does a shopper add your product into their regular shopping behaviours, their regular consumption occasions? So Bativo is a great example of, it's a great tasting, alcohol-free product that people are engaging with because people are zebra striping their drinks, or people are just consuming a bit less, or want a health benefit from the calories we're consuming. But they've done a brilliant job of going, and you can mix it with this and have it in a long drink on this occasion, or you can just, it's almost treat over here, and it's almost functional, permissible health over here. So that means that actually, and I would choose to drink it on different occasions depending on what I want.
Listen,
So
I have one pretty much every Monday and Tuesday and sometimes Wednesday. But then if I'm drinking But it's as it does fill that into the week. Yeah,
Yeah.
and thought like that.
I think the other way I agree on what you're saying. That I think the other piece is you're hitting sort of north of 10 million in terms of turnover, and again, there's still a huge amount to go. But if you're Dash Water and quite the guys there, the next thing to think about is what is it your shopper? Where does your shopper want you to go next? So maybe
Where does your shopper want you to go next?
So if I use two examples, if I use the Dashwater guys and then Shagan at Jim Kitchen, and perhaps the guys at Wild as well, and they've gone two separate ways. So
I know most people listen to this, but so Dash is water, Shagan's like protein, and then
Wild is yes.
Yeah. So go through each.
So Dash, I guess, are in a high frequency category. So the question then is how far can you stretch that? And again,
When you say high frequency, it's because people are picking up water all the time.
Soft drinks are consumed multiple times in the day, even by the same people. So again, this is nothing to do with Dash piece, but again, is there an opportunity to use different fruits, different wonky fruits, to extend that into the evening potentially? It's like one way you can stay in the same category, but you can still continue to build up to £100 million brand just by extending that. What Shagan on his high protein gym meals aimed at a younger, slightly more male audience has done really well, has understood what else does that audience want from them, and they've moved into frozen, moved into lots of different subcategories following the shop around. They love what Shagan's done.
Yes.
Being able to bring high protein into different parts of the audience's meal, and being pulled out of the fridge or the freezer or the cupboard more often to meet more needs is the way Shagan has built Jim Kitchen really well. And if you look at Wild, they did similar. So from sustainable refill deodorants, understanding where else do the shoppers also love the brand, but also where else could they stretch category-wise and take Wild into.
Where do they go into? What sort of stuff?
So a number of other household categories, and obviously that exited to Unilever off the back of that, but all built off highly sustainable, fulfilling a real need, understanding who the shopper or the user was, and then work out which other categories were there an opportunity to disrupt positively in the same way.
Yeah.
So again, it's just thinking that through and asking all those, I guess, asking the questions, but asking the questions of the right people to see how far you can stretch
it's that incremental piece again. So Wild, okay, if you're using me as a deodorant, what else are the touch points where it's credible and authentic? Maybe I'll use a shower gel. Maybe I'll use shampoo, conditioner, skincare, authentic and credible. Can I move from Wild into a salad on a meal deal? Probably not. Brand stretch too far. Dash, again, I think you summarised it brilliantly. How do you create more moments throughout the day? So is there a natural addition to that water that is a natural energy giver? Are we going to see the emergence of aptogens? Are we going to see nootropics moving into that space? Shagan, actually a huge shout out, has done something that sometimes even the big brands can't do, and has created such a loyal fan base of his brand that he has broken out of the freezer, the fridge, and
that's the hardest part.
And that's why I genuinely mean there are a lot of big brands that cannot get out of their parent category. And I think, again, we're talking numbers and we're talking size and we're talking scale, but celebrate the stretch as well. That is what everybody wants. What are the touch points of my brand in a store? Well, in Shagan's example, if I'm only going to the freezer, I'm probably going to see it. If I'm only going to the freezer, I'm still going to see it. If I'm going to food to go, I'm still going to see it. That is a beautiful brand masterclass.
Let's talk about raising the glass, because I know that's important to you. So yeah, just sort of talk us through that when you've found it, what the vision is, because I think that's a massive part of our. As much as it's great stories plus data are not listings, there's much more to this,
Yeah, I think it's really easy to talk about data, to talk about stories, to listen to podcasts, and this podcast really matters. Your listening numbers, people are getting something from it. It's a community. So Raising the Glass is a year old this month, and it was an industry initiative set up to create meaningful connections for women and allies in the drinks industry. Based on some lived experiences, I started working with the drinks industry a couple of years ago, and just some of my observations just felt like it's an amazing category. It's the one that is exciting and sociable and creates moments and different touch points, but there are still things that are happening today that just don't seem like the progressive drinks industry that we maybe think it is.
Such as
It can be very inaccessible. It can be very difficult to create space for yourself in the category. From a VC funding point of view, less than 2% of women-founded businesses are achieving VC funding. It's even less if you're a person of colour or a woman of colour. So the statistics speak for themselves. When you add hospitality in, there's a huge percentage of women who have said that they don't want to be working in hospitality in a year's time because they either have or think they're going to be a victim of sexual harassment. These are statistics that are impacting everybody in the industry. And, you know, I'm very privileged with the company I work for in CoOp, and, you know, my leadership team, there's visibility and representation, and then you go into some forums and it's not there. Raising the Glass was set up just to create meaningful connections for women and allies. We do it through free-to-attend quarterly networking events. We do it through supper clubs. We do it through a mentoring platform in partnership with Fevertree. We have the Raising the Glass podcast. And each little bit is laddering up to creating that space for those conversations. It is industry-wide. So there is women in beer, there's women in wine, there's lots of things, but this is about women and allies.
When you say and allies?
So including allies very deliberately early on was for two reasons. We have to have allies in the room. We have to have it. I don't believe we can drive change as quickly if we just have women in the room talking about some of our challenges. Mm-hmm. We need allyship to help us drive change.
Who are some of those allies?
There are some great allies. I would give a shout out to Lee James from Remy Cointreau, who has been a very quiet ally in terms of not doing it for his own benefit, but to really drive change. And we recently held an event at the Remy Cointreau's offices around powers, pairings and purpose. Kieran's been an avid supporter from day one in terms of some of the challenger brands that we have in that space. I think when you create something that's for the industry, you can't frame what it's going to look like fully. But what I have found is the amount of challenger brands in that space, they're coming back again and again because it's creating those conversations. We were talking earlier before we hit record. It can be lonely. The industry can sometimes be so fast-paced and so siloed. And then when you are a challenger brand and there's maybe a bit of imposter syndrome or a bit of self-doubt, how do you find your tribe? And what Raising the Glass has done through a community that's way bigger than me is create a safe space for people to have those conversations and be seen and be heard and being supported. And the thing I'm most proud of is the community and how it comes together.
What are some of the learnings you've taken just from doing that and speaking to so many interesting, you know, people?
I'm hugely privileged to get to speak to some amazing people. Yeah. So I'm really, truly blessed. Everybody faces challenges. I think the biggest learning I've taken is certainly when you're starting out, the imposter syndrome's real. I think the imposter syndrome's real for a lot of people. And setting up something like Raising the Glass, I'll be very open and honest, my imposter syndrome is through the roof. Yeah, I've only been in the drinks industry at the time, I think about 6 months when I set it up. Surely there are people that have done this before. Surely there's things that are bigger. But I think if you can just anchor back to what your values are, and for me, it's how do we create safe spaces for people to be their best version of themselves, because that's where the magic happens. That's what Raising the Glass is about. How can we create spaces where people can be a little bit better than they were yesterday, but also how do we create spaces where people can be vulnerable and share some of the things that have happened? Because, as I said, there's some things out there that are not great, that are not good. And one of the biggest learnings I've observed is sometimes, from the conversations I've had with women, we sometimes internalize it or we sit on it, we think maybe it's something that we've done, and sometimes you just need a bit of validation. Your imposter syndrome is okay. I haven't got a magic wand, I can't take it away, but if you know that it exists, can you reframe it into improver syndrome? So for every challenger brand out there going, I've got imposter syndrome, Kim Wilson from North South Wines came on the podcast and she talks a lot about that. Just I'm just trying to be a little bit better tomorrow than I was today. And the only way I can do that is by not knowing everything today.
So I love that, and we can put a link towards that. I know you've got to run and you've got another thing, but last thing I want to sort of just touch on, is kind of looping back to the beginning, but it's like this whole tension of like, do brands create categories, or, you know, or should? Because I think at some point someone will listen to this thinking, I've got this brand new idea, I believe it's going somewhere, but everyone else thinks I'm crazy. It's like, and do I keep going? The other side of it is, let's go for a big category, probably like a dash, and one day we will hopefully exit and we'll take a sliver. But I'm sort of seeing all sorts of stuff, and just getting the retailer's perspective on this. It's like some trends come in from, I don't know, so I suppose the question is spotting a trend versus a fad. Like, I think seeing this whole new iced coffee thing, I don't know if you guys are doing it. Like, part of me thinks this is either going to boot off or it's just going to completely bomb. Like, what's your perspective on that, just to wrap things up?
So there will always be, particularly now in this generation with access to social media and influencers, the wow moments, the Dubai chocolate, the prime, the bubble tea, the rush out and buy it. And what everybody will be trying to work out is it a trend or is it a moment? And it's okay if it's a moment. And actually, their question then to retailers is, how do you get even quicker to be able to bring those moments to market and get the sales whilst the trend is spiking before it might move on to something else? Now, that's really interesting, because we probably haven't set retail up, or even FMCG up, to be that quick and that fast-paced. And that's a change that I've certainly seen over the last few years, which is super exciting if we can respond to it. To answer that bigger question of, do brands create categories? Who defines what categories are? For how much longer are we going to talk about drinks, protein, dairy, bakery? That's not how we do our shopping. We come into a store and go, I need to get something for dinner tonight. I'm going to get some chicken and I'm going to put some veg with it, and I'm going to get some fish and do a stir fry, whatever it might. That is how, as human beings, our minds work through a shopping trip. There's lots of evidence from shopper decision hierarchy. Is it taste? But what's the main driver? Why are you in that store?
So that's the shopper mission, isn't it? I think?
Yeah.
Cool.
And so that means it's all up for grabs, because we're still saying, you know, do you create a category? Dash, do you go into the big drinks? Do you do something over here? If you've got a product that is anchoring to health or indulgence, actually now more than ever, I think the lines are blurring between drinks and snacks. And so maybe you want to start talking about the health category or the indulgence category, because also people are finding it's interchangeable. So if I'm consuming something for health, I'm not necessarily going to layer and layer and layer. What is it in the retail market today that gives me, with that personalization element, the best benefit for my health? So an example for me would be, I'm really, really hot on gut health. I truly believe it has a huge benefit to how I feel, my brain, my gut health. I'm also conscious of whether I'm consuming enough fiber. So gut health drinks with fiber is one of the things that's really important to me. And that's how I drive that personalization of the soft drink I'm looking at. I'm buying it because it's got fiber. Now, my shopper mission is I'm thirsty and I can get something else in my calorie count here.
So is almost the story then should be linked to the shopper mission, do you think, more so than the actual category piece?
Yeah, don't limit yourself. If you've got a brilliant idea that you know shoppers are going to buy, don't try and hook it into the sparkling water category or the premium chocolate category. Hook it into a broader trend of, at the moment, more than ever, with GLP-1, what is the change that we're seeing?
What's that?
Weight loss injections.
Okay,
so
Ozempic.
Yes. And so if you're a challenger brand out there, what impact is that having? And actually, again, back to the pace, sometimes challenger brands can be quicker in this pace. If you look at the States, where I think it's between 16 to 20% of adults have used weight loss injections, it's taken billions of dollars out of the American food and grocery market. We're at about 6% in the UK of adults using these injections. What could that mean in the future? And if you're being told it's about hydration and protein and fiber, where are you going to look for that? Might you go and look for that in a chocolate bar, but might it be a great tasting indulgent treat that's packed full of nutrient density? The market we're operating in is going to go through seismic shifts quicker than ever before. innovation is going to speed up and speed up and speed up. So if you hear nothing else from today,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter whether the category exists now, because tomorrow you could have made it.
Yes. No, I think that would be so reassuring for listeners. And it's interesting, like I just saw a shitload of hot chocolate, like I don't know if that's going to become big. I don't know whether, but I saw loads of hot chocolate in M&S earlier. I was like literally bays of it. I was thinking, fucking hell, like what's going on with this? But you never know. Like one of my very good mates owns a brand called Islands Chocolate, and suddenly the demand from retail for premium hot chocolate, which, and I was having this conversation with Lou, who was the ex-sales director of Rally Life, I saw the other day, and she was like, oh, is the category big enough for hot chocolate? And so I sent her that picture, and it's like, well, actually, is there, it doesn't matter if on paper the category is big now, it's like, what's going to happen tomorrow,
So in that example, is the category hot chocolate, or is the category indulgent hot drinks, or is the category drinks, or is the category, is there something added to that hot chocolate so it has a health lens? That's the bit I'm meaning.
I think that was it, because it was, I should probably get some, it was like a slightly lower calorie version.
Yeah.
So it's like, which I think even that thinking alone just opens, what we've talked about today is how do you go bigger? How do you start here, or do those circles out? But I think the other part of that is the bigger category play. Just finish with you, mate, like anything on that and how, like anything you sort of add to
I think we're not in a store now, we're in a fantastic Big Fish office, but if we were in a store walking up and down, the growth is almost coming in between traditional categories because of the reason Rom calls out. So one of the bits, I guess one of the retail challenges coming forward is store layout, which is super complicated, and how to go from, I guess, meal deal used to be a sandwich, crisps and a drink. That's broadened beyond belief as that occasion is now accessible for more and more people based on the choice that's in there. Big night in. That's only the start in terms of starting to merchandise based on sort of missions that we're talking about, that, or the reason people are in the store. How far do you push that? Could be huge, but if you fast forward 10 years, I think the layout of stores will look completely different. The role of brands today is just to be really clear in their mind, back to the stores and the data in a way. What are we fulfilling for who, and how do we just back that out a little bit to try and help? Is this a trend or is this a moment? If you can ground it a little bit more in why you think it's bigger and for who and how, that makes it a little bit easier for the retailers to know, or the buyers, I guess, to know, oh my God, what do I do with this? Because I'm still operating a little bit within some restrictions and constraints, but they'll find a way for opportunities that are more sizable. So the question around building categories, I think, is it's trying to understand what's driving such great demand for something that's slightly different that's been here before. And if you play it forward a little bit, how big could this be? How quickly will it be that big? Bringing that value in, I think, into the conversations is one that the brands should take upon themselves and have a chance to as well, some of that change.
I think there's one other bit. We've talked a lot about that positive intent and finding the gap, and we talked about what matters most in the motivations. There's one other bit about that reframing is how do you overcome the barriers? So in that hot chocolate example, what are the barriers to hot chocolate? I might only want it when it's cold. I might not drink it because it's a treat because it's got too much sugar in. Or I don't want the calories. If you can understand this, if you're sat there thinking, I've got this idea, but I just don't quite know, it's that Rubik's Cube of, it might not be yet about creating the category. The answer for your brand and your product might come from what barriers do you help people overcome? So
Okay, so this is really, this is a perfect way to end then. So we've got the first question is what matters most? What do you say, hurdles or?
what barriers?
Barriers, sorry. So with hot chocolate, for example, some of those barriers would be.
I'm only going to have it once a week because it's high in sugar.
Yeah.
Well, actually, guess what, retailer X? We've got this brilliant low sugar content. It's got high protein in, and it's got something that's going to do amazing stuff to your gut health. People are going to want to drink this twice a week. In that pitch alone, you've doubled your sales.
It's again, just literally because I was speaking to Will for Islands the other day, like they're doing a massive push on like almost like they're nicking the iced coffee thing that's doing like iced. It's not iced hot chocolate, obviously not. That would be a silly way to call it that.
But do you know what? It possibly is, so people understand what it is.
But that whole sort of framing and any other sort of questions to answer or just to think about.
I can't talk enough about the power of connectivity. So again, I've had the privilege of seeing some amazing challenger brands who
Sorry, connectivity as in...
with connecting with either your shoppers that you want to talk to or your retailer when you want to get a listing. And I think it's very easy when you have that imposter syndrome, or somebody's going, this is your one chance to have a meeting with us, to go, I'm not an expert, I'm going to use some fractional support. You are your brand story when you're a challenger brand. That's what people buy into. And I can guarantee you, I can still remember the pitches where I've had goosebump moments, or where something's really kind of resonated with me and somebody has brought me into that narrative and made me want to be a part of changing the world, or in understanding how their brand can do something different. Never, ever, ever lose sight of the reason why you created this product or this brand, because of what you believed in. Just share your story a bit so we all get a chance to believe in it.
Yeah, I think ask for help behind the scenes to give yourself the confidence to know that you do deserve to be in that conversation, leading that conversation, putting yourself out there, rather than remove yourself from it and let someone else have it on your behalf, for sure.
And reframe the no's. They're not no's, they're just not yet.
Other little objections.
They're just not yet.
We could go on for hours. I have to get another one in because I could just do this for hours. But you've got to run. You've got another thing, Ron. But thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And
Thank you, Dan.
yeah, what a joy. Thank you.
Thank you very much.